That is why I prepared a short little thing about myself to prevent this kind of, thank you very much. From Micronocetris garifuna to Micronocetris bururi, the incident in the naming of a newly discovered Euromane St. Vincent bat. In August 2005, a group of biologists from several universities in the United States came to St. Vincent to carry out a survey of our local bat population. They collected several specimens of a bat they and previous researchers had always thought to be that of a fairly common and well-known South American species, Micronocetris megalotis. It then took about 2 years specimens, during which time Peter Larson, one of the team from Texas Tech University, realized that they had indeed collected something entirely new and never before observed, and that the Micronocetris species they had collected was in fact a brand new species of bat. To the extreme delight and joy of these scientists, further DNA analysis of the specimens confirmed their findings, and they began the process of describing and naming this new species. The scientific protocol gives the person or persons who describes the species the privilege of naming the species, and a binomial Latin-derived scientific name is chosen. It is the normally and generally accepted practice among modern scientists that the name chosen be relevant to the place that the species was found, or in honor of someone specially deserving of this honor. But they are, however, indeed privileged enough to give it almost any name they so desire. On St. Vincent, they were obviously told about the history of the island, about the British and the Caribs, and about Chatoyer and the Garifuna people. It must always be kept in mind that these particular scientists simply love bats. They work with bats, they dream about bats, they talk non-stop about bats. Their world revolves around bats, and they actually think that bats are the most beautiful of creatures. They decided that because of the welcome and the interest they receive from the people of St. Vincent, and because of the pride they heritage, they decided to honor the Garifuna culture by naming the new bat Micronocetris garifuna. The scientific paper describing Micronocetris garifuna was eventually submitted to the Journal of Mammalian Biology in November 2010 for publication. And the pre-publication online version was uploaded to the internet in May 2011. It took only a short while for the online Garifuna community to wake up to the situation that their people's name was being used on a new species of bat from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The internet was subsequently flooded with communication blogs vehemently protesting against the choice of the Garifuna name being used for a bat. This act by the scientists was thus described by those protesting from the wider Garifuna diaspora as being shameful and insulting and totally disrespectful. An ugly creature after the Garifuna people was totally unacceptable. Peter Larson and the participating scientists were initially shocked at this response, since it was their sole intention to honor the Garifuna people. They soon realized that because of their blinded prejudice in favor of bats, and because of their very short and limited immersion into Vincentian life, they did not take into account the prevailing local culture. And spiders and bats are very much scorned and abhorred. These scientists quickly apologized for not finding a way to communicate with the Garifuna community, and with manners and behavior seeking their approval beforehand on this matter. Since these scientists' intention in the naming of the species was sincere, they requested of the Garifuna community a new name of their own choosing. The scientific paper was thus officially published in 2011, and now official name Micronocetris bururi. Bururi being the Garifuna word for bat. So the dictum, all's well that ends well, might therefore possibly be used here to put a closure to this somewhat obscure but very significant event. In discussing this event, I would rather not attempt to enter further into the cultural stigmas associated or entering into the seemingly never-ending fight to remove the false and debilitating myths that continue to be imposed on the noble Kalilago and Garifuna people. I would, however, very much like, primarily as a local amateur naturalist, to briefly discuss a few of the other possible implications arising out of this controversial bat naming event. In November, I remember very well in 1994, a scientist discovered a new species of. He decided to name it Spherodactylus kirbii, in honor of Dr. Earl Kirby. I know for a fact that Dr. Kirby was very proud of this particular honor bestowed upon him, as he disliked the MBE and the OBE honors of the British conquerors. Dr. Kirby was a local historian and archaeologist whose entire life was dedicated to studying and promoting the culture and history of the indigenous people, and protecting and conserving the natural heritage of his country, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As a naturalist, he was very much concerned with the general lack of understanding and appreciation for the natural environment and the animals that lived in this environment. He thus dedicated his life to educating his people about the beauty and value of local wildlife, and especially those harmless and beneficial ugly creatures that his fellow Vincentians feared, scorned. There are many endemic plants and animals found nowhere else in the world, which are named for St. Vincent and the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Some of these wildlife species are so-called beautiful to behold, like the wild mountain begonia, Begonia vinciana, and the St. Vincent parrot, Amazona gildingi, named for Reverend Lansdowne Gilding, a 19th century curator of the St. Vincent Botanical Gardens. But there are also many others that are so-called downright ugly. Critters include the St. Vincent gecko, Spherodactylus vincenti, the St. Vincent black snake, Chironus vincenti, the St. Vincent millipede, Antilodomus vincenti, and the St. Vincent tarantula, Tapinaceus santi vincenti. All of these Vincentian endemics have been described and named very long time ago. And to discover a new endemic species on our tiny, possible in the 21st century. It is important to note here that of the thousands of species discovered every year in places like the dense jungles of the Amazon or the remote places of New Guinea or Borneo, only 0.2% are mammals. Hence the extraordinary and newsworthy nature of the discovery of Micronocetris bururi. It was very island of Barbados in 2008 that Blair Hedges, a biologist from Pennsylvania State University in the US, made another extraordinary discovery. He found in Barbados the world's smallest snake, which he described and called Leptotyphlos carlei, in honor of his wife, Carla. This extremely newsworthy brought significant attention to the island of Barbados, as well as a barrage of protest from many Barbadians. Using the internet and their blogs, they clogged the local radio airwaves. They vented their anger at this US scientist with expressions like, "How dare this man come in here and name our snake after his wife?" In spite of this protest, Blair Hedges decided to stick with the International Code of Zoology, refused to rename the snake, which will now carry his wife's name to eternity. Can I have a little water, please? Few people are aware that snakes in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are protected by official legislation, and that it is illegal to kill any of our harmless snakes, our harmless local snakes, simply because they are valuable predators that feed on rats and other rodents. Excuse me. The bats of St. Vincent and the Grenadines are fruit eaters, nectar drinkers, insect eaters, and carnivorous fish eaters. Micronocetris bururi is an insect-eating bat. Further studies will eventually be done on this particular species, but it is generally known that a single insect-eating bat can eat in 1 hour. They eat roaches and grasshoppers, mosquitoes and flies, and they also consume a large amount of night-flying moths that lay minute eggs, which become caterpillars and worms that destroy the agricultural crops. Today, when we today need food, we simply go to the supermarket or the shop and purchase the items we need. This is the accepted norm, and it is therefore almost to fully imagine or to comprehend what it was like to completely depend on the food we have planted, or to wait patiently for it to grow and mature. Our indigenous people knew well how much their very existence depended entirely upon the land and the sea around them. Over the many centuries, they must have accumulated a tremendous practical wisdom that helped them to distinguish their true enemies from their true friends. It was harmful and ugly. From what was beautiful and beneficial. Testimony to this today is located in a prominent place as one enters the small archaeological museum in the old Carnegie building on the back street, Kingstown. There sits one of the most important and beautiful archaeological finds in the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It is referred to as the Bat Stand, a large, elaborately sculptured ceremonial artifact with the face of a bat, indigenous people of St. Vincent. So exquisite is this artifact that some archaeologists suspect that it was probably only used by priests and only in religious ceremonies. Recent and ongoing archaeological research have been discovering the importance of the bat, male, and the frog, female, in the religion and mythology of the early indigenous Caribbean people. They are also discovering more and more that our early indigenous people were indeed very wise and well grounded in the natural environment around them, and that they highly valued creatures like the bat that controlled the insect pests on their crops and subsequently protected their very existence and their life. In conclusion, I would hope that this incident would help us to think a little more about the colonial honors and awards that our government continues to bestow upon our people. It is high time we learn to discern true beauty from ugliness. In this tiny country, we continue to destroy the land, the forests, and God's harmless creatures even before we know their benefits or their purpose. And someday soon, our great-grandchildren will be ashamed of us. I would also like to suggest in closing that just as the Garifuna Nation is a unique coming together of the Kalinago and African peoples and cultures, we too must learn to seek out and to bring together the wisdom of the indigenous people and the wisdom of Africa, where, for example, bats are credited with high intelligence, as well as being a symbol of death and rebirth, and are able to guide people through the dark nights of their lives. Thank you.